The good news is you can do this. And I'm going to encourage you, whatever you've been through, my prayers are with you. My thoughts are with you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rolla, clinical psychologist, and today I want to talk to you about the Detox Pathway. This is a principle that I want to share with you related to my Marriage in Crisis Bootcamp series. I just started that series. I just did one asking you and your spouse to look at reasonable goals that you can set about your relationship, considering the current crisis that you are facing. This one is about how do you begin to detox from unhealthy buildup in your relationship. I'm going to share some practical ways to begin to do that. Before I continue with this topic, I would love you to subscribe, press that notification bell so that you have immediate access to my videos. I also would love you to follow me on social media at Ask Dr. Rolla, AskDrRolla. Now, when you think about detox, you can hear a lot of birds chirping out here. When you think about detox, you're thinking about purifying, about cleansing, about putting in healthy things, healthy foods and liquids to allow the body to rest and get rid of foods and other things, including stress, lack of sleep, that has caused the body to be toxic. If your marriage is going through a crisis right now, and you're struggling in many areas, more likely things have built up over time. Even if the crisis that you're facing is new, something that you have never experienced before, some of the unhealthy patterns that you're displaying in your marriage were patterns that has been in place for a while. I want to encourage you with this principle of detoxing to consider doing things that are positive to help to purify and detoxify your marriage from unhealthy patterns. When the human body is toxic, the body is tired, the immune system is not working at its maximum, and that body is at a greater risk of having disease because the body's ability to resist disease has been lowered. Even though you may not be able to handle some of the challenges you're facing right away because it's overwhelming, you can do this. You can detox. And you can detox as a person. Your spouse can detox, and do it as a process rather than looking for a quick fix pattern. Many couples that I have worked with go through crisis, patch it up, don't deal with the underlying issues, and go through this honeymoon season where everybody says that's gone now, we're not dealing with it. And then the next time there's a challenge, which is what we call life. You live long enough, you're going to have challenges. Those crises then come up or manifest in a much greater dimension. And then those who are married and those in this relationship now say, I'm tired, I'm fed up, I'm not doing this anymore. And that many times is because they have not handled prior crises in a fundamental level, which is going to the reason for the crisis, learning new behaviors. They patch it up, and now when challenges come, the problems seem more exacerbated. This causes people who are married to start to detest each other, loathe each other, and then feel that there's no hope for the marriage. This detox pathway principle helps you to put in positive things in your relationship, even though the problem is massive at that time and it may seem difficult as to how to even begin to handle it. So now I'm going to share with you practical tips to detox. Remember, detox is about putting in healthy And oftentimes those are healthy foods and liquids that are light and not full of calories in order to get the body to get rid of the toxicity. When you are going through crisis, you can do these things to feed your relationship with positive, even if it's in small doses. And even if you feel like the crisis is something you cannot handle right now. Number one, I want you to focus on your communication. When I mean communication, I mean how you relate to each other, both verbally and non-verbally. And even though you cannot fix a communication problem overnight, you can begin to do this. You can begin to have short, brief conversations with each other about what is needed to keep the family unit going. I know some of you may think this is monotonous, but it's not. Talk about the bills. Talk about picking up the kids, dropping them off. Talk about short-term goals that you're working on so that the family unit can run on a more efficient level. Do not feel that because it's not lovey-dovey that you're wasting your time. It is better to stay in communication about things that are mundane than to not talk at all. In order to maintain that communication, I'm going to ask you to desist from using texting. Texting has been one of the main challenges that, in my experience, that married couples are dealing with, because when they are fighting or they have this vacuum between them, they're using texting to stay connected or to keep things going, but not talking to each other. What that is doing, it is widening the gap between the spouses, and that is a bad thing. You really want to show your spouse through your communication, and you want them to show you that you need each other. In spite of what is going on, we can engage. And even if we don't engage on a lovey-dovey situation, we're still engaging. And you're going to give yourself and your spouse credit for doing that. If your spouse does not feel ready to do that, you do it. And I'm going to encourage you, do not respond to your spouse about issues or argue by text. It widens the gap between both of you, increases the likelihood of misunderstanding, and you are more likely to feel that you're not for each other, and the downward spiral in terms of the relationship can be accelerated. We don't want that. So text about things that are basic, which is what time are you coming home or things like that, fine. But I've known couples texting about when are you cooking dinner, when are you picking up the kids, to avoid making eye contact. That is bad. In your communication, it's okay for it to be brief, because both of you are feeling overwhelmed right now and you don't really know how you will handle it if you engage into hot topics. Keep it brief, but please make it polite. Some of you say, he has hurt me so much, she has hurt me so much. But when you go out there in the real world and you're working and you're doing other things, you don't outright, hopefully, get in people's faces and fight them. How much does it cost to be polite? If you never used to say please and thank you before, start saying it now. While you may disagree on bigger issues, you can agree on being respectful of that person's humanity, being respectful of that person as a human being. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for working on that for me. Thank you for picking up. You are being polite and respectful. And I want you to see those efforts as a way of feeding your relationship, even though it is not where you want it to be, even though it's not at the level you want it to be, but you're feeding it in small doses of positive to allow your marriage to receive positive, even in small doses. And even though you can't talk about hot topics, that is also helping to keep the love alive, even if the flame is very low. I want you to desist from using children as messengers, which a lot of couples do. Now you get third parties involved or other people to talk about basic things. Now, you need third parties to help you resolve issues if they're very complex, if you are continuing to disagree. But I found that marriages where the children are used as intermediaries and the children are aware that that the parents are arguing and the children are now having to be used to communicate, one of the worst things you can do to your children is put your emotional garbage on them. I want you to demonstrate your need for your spouse by engaging them even on things that may seem mundane and showing them that you have need of them and they have need of you. I want you to respect the space of the other person if they do not want to be that space to be invaded outright. If you, for example, have committed adultery against your wife or your husband, if they want a little bit of space and they're showing respect, respect that space. But I want you to negotiate with them that even though they have that space, you want to go into that space to talk about mundane things. I don't believe it's okay, except in cases of course, if there's danger, if there's violence, we'll talk about that another time, then obviously space better be respected. If you have battered your spouse and they're now asking for space, how dare you invade their space because you want to be back with them? You must respect that, because you have violated that space and it takes time to earn trust. Even though you've asked for forgiveness, that does not mean they should believe you right away. You need to be patient to follow up the things that you say in your apology by action over a period of time. And you still have to give them the respect and the right to decide whether they want to trust you or not. I want you to desist from any name calling. Even if you think the name calling is justified. You're this, you're that, you're this. You're lazy, you're nobody, you're full. Even if everything you want to say is that, what purpose is it serving when you do that? None. If you're in a crisis, and many of you could be going through a crisis in your marriage, and you want things to improve, name calling, labeling, demeaning words to each other, saying that you're justified because of how you hurt me is not helping your marriage, is not helping the crisis. The more you say the negative things, even though it feels good in the moment, the more there's built up anger and frustration towards them. If you are doing that with your spouse, over time, do not be surprised if they do not want to engage with you anymore. Some of you are so demeaning and condescending in your words and in your behavior and your demeanor, but in the same vein, you're demanding that they do this for you. And I understand your frustration, maybe it's justified, but you are not helping the crisis by doing name calling. And how to approach a problem, if you're frustrated about it, that's another skill to develop and to work on or to hone. But name calling doesn't serve any purpose. If there's a particular issue you want to talk about that is urgent, then we will talk a little bit in this video about what to do with that. But right now, name calling, disallowed. Demeaning words, disallowed. If you have an anger management problem, regardless of the pressure that your spouse has been putting on you and pressing your buttons, I'm going to ask you to begin to look for ways to work through that anger and how to get away from volatile situations. But name calling is unacceptable. And if you do it, apologize in the moment. What I said is inappropriate. This is how you're going to talk to them. What I just called you is inappropriate because what I'm frustrated about is this. I'm frustrated that you're not paying the bills. But that does not mean it's okay for me to call you a loser. Do you see the difference? Apologize in the moment. Even though they've done you wrong, they owe you an apology. Apologize for what you are wrong about now. Because even though they may not be doing the work of detoxification, you are doing it for yourself. If this marriage fails and you move on, you still have to heal. Why don't you do the best you can to watch what you say and what you put into that marriage, even in times of crisis, to help yourself so that you are handling the crisis in a much more balanced and healthy way, in spite of your frustration. And you're also helping your ability to exercise improved self-control. I want you to ask things from your spouse in a way that is not entitling. Some of you will say, I'm your husband. I'm the head of his home. You got to do this, that. I'm your wife. This is your job. In this season of crisis, when both of you are overwhelmed, regardless of who initiate or who is maybe more at blame of the other or not, you don't want to talk to your spouse in an entitled manner, because they're in a defensive place more likely, and they're feeling drained and exhausted. Why don't you try to talk to them in a way that is asking and respectful? And even if they say no, you have asked. Regardless of their answer, you are staying engaged in communicating with them, and you are not feeding an already difficult situation with negative doses of negative doses, and you're allowing both you and your spouse to go through this season working through it step by step rather than complicating the situation. This detoxification pathway principle is really important because you are showing increased impulse control. You're going to have a better handle on your emotions and in solving problems in your relationship, in your marriage, but even in dealing with your children, in your career. You're acknowledging that even though you may be hurt and you may feel like you're the one who is on the receiving end of the negativity, that you have the ability to show value to yourself and not going low to a place of negativity, even though there's a pressure for you to do that, even though you may feel justified to do that. And then one other important benefit of this detox pathway principle is that you are protecting what you have. I love this scripture that says, strengthen what remains. I'm going to leave the scripture quotation for you. Even though you're in crisis, it is an opportunity for you to remember the times when things were working and things that you guys have done together. You may not be able to fix this right away, but at least protect what you have left. Don't dismantle it. Don't destroy it. It is easier to destroy something than to rebuild it. And then the very last thing about this detox pathway principle is that you can take the process of healing and change as a journey. Don't be so quick to fix a problem that's been there and been building up for years. Understand that when you do it in a journey, step by step, the healing is going to be for real. You're not patching up things just so people can say you're doing well. And your relationship is more likely to get the healing, the health that it needs. And you can bounce back from a very difficult situation. Now that I've come to the end of this video, I want you to please share it with as many people as possible. I'm very passionate about this series, and I want you to subscribe, and I will definitely talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye now.